Welcome to TMC Newsroom. I'm Carl Ford, sitting here in San Jose remotely. I'm here with Deirdre Mahon, who is the VP of Marketing at Rainstor. And Deirdre, first of all, thank you for being here.
Thanks very much, Carl.
Now, we're going to get into the subject of big data. And for me from the East Coast, I didn't know what big data was till Ohm woke me up to it. So explain to me the concept of big data right off the bat.
Okay. So big data is something that IT groups across the world, even on the East Coast, are dealing with. So large organizations are driven to keep data for much longer than ever before. Now, of course, it depends on the industry sector. There's compliance regulations that force companies to keep data online and available for query. And this is data that's years old. So in telecommunications, you have to keep call detail records, usage data for 7 to up to 10 years in some countries. In India, it's 10 years. In the United States, it's a few years, and in Europe, it's 7 to 10 years. So that's just one industry sector where if you think of all of the smartphone and iPad usage data, that must be kept online and accessible. Now, keeping it in a traditional database is very costly. So we, Rainstor, are addressing that problem and making the economics of data retention much more efficient and cost-effective.
Right, and to the point about the big data aspect of it, the big changes for me, and I apologize for being so old, but
I'm right behind you.
We used to keep things, basically offline in different systems. We had tapes, we had other backup systems.
Yeah.
Now the ability to take advantage of all this memory and hard disk storage is that we can keep it online.
Exactly.
But to do that, you want to compress it as much as possible. So tell me about how you guys manage compression and how you make it so that people have better access to this data.
So Rainstor's IP is very much at the heart of it. It's all about massive compression and deduplication. So think of certain types of data and how it can be deduplicated. So let's take the example of the communications. Yahoo.com is only stored once in a Rainstor repository. In a traditional database, that's stored each time a transaction takes place or somebody browses on their smartphone device. So we also do, that's value level deduplication. We also look for common patterns. So Carl, every other Carl that's in the East Coast that's doing various activities on that particular system, that pattern is stored only once. And Rainstor has a series of pointers that point to the common patterns. We do further levels of deduplication, algorithmic and byte level, to compress that data down. For example, getting rid of common null values, such that the footprint becomes much less, 95% less the original size, if it were stored in a traditional database. So you can imagine the storage costs that you gain by storing it in a Rainstor repository versus your traditional Oracle or even analytical environment, for example.
Okay, got it. Now, are there any new products or new announcements that you guys have, or any milestones you've hit recently?
Yeah, one of the unique things about Rainstor is we go to market through large ISVs. So our partners are HP, Dell, Teradata, Informatica. So our specialized database, which by the way is online and always queryable, which is a very important aspect, not offline and tape, they take our repository to market through their solutions, and then they serve the market. So one of our latest announcements was with Dell. They have a new storage device called a Dell DX. It's a unified storage device. So think of a large Fortune 500. They have to keep all their email files, unstructured data, images, and they have to store that for X years. They also need to store the structured data. So if you're financial services, all that stock tick data needs to be stored, and they can keep it on this one device, reduce that footprint by a factor of 20, 30, 40 to 1, much less cost per terabyte. So we're pretty excited to take this technology to market through Dell. As you can imagine, they are a very large organization, lots of customers. Some of the other more recent announcements on the product side is you've probably heard of Hadoop. Our technology runs on a Hadoop distributed file system. So where you have massive data volumes and you need to take advantage of scale as the data volumes grow, we can run on a HDFS system. So it's very flexible. You can run it on a SAN device if you so choose. You don't have to. You run on a cheaper, low-cost commodity hardware, cloud or Hadoop.
And to the Hadoop side of the equation here, so if I've got different departments, I can be optimized for the individual departments to, like if my accounting is in Texas and my sales is in California, then in effect the way you guys have structured the data, besides only keeping the image once, the pointers will make it so that the data are in the right place for the maximum availability, right?
Yes, absolutely. You can have multiple Rainstor repositories. You can run it on premise in your data center. You can run it on the cloud, and you can partition. So if you want to separate out the data, we have different partitions depending if there's security concerns with that particular client. They can store the data separately. Absolutely.
Now, I hate to ask this question because I always like to ask questions I know the customer knows the answer to. So let me ask you one that I don't know the answer to, and I'm curious. Are most of your clientele having a one-to-one backup? Is there a one-to-many backup? How do they manage their images, their backup images of the system?
Well, now think of us as an online archive. Now, best practice would not be to use us as a backup. So you might have your primary repository, Oracle. If you've reduced the size of that Oracle by offloading some of that historical data to Rainstor, then your backup is going to be much less heavy. The data size is not going to be as big, so it's going to be much more efficient for your backup. In terms of our continuous availability, we have built-in high availability aspects to our own database, so the data is constantly available and queryable.
Got it. Cool. And just out of curiosity, what's your target customer base? Like, are you looking for Fortune 2000? Should I be looking at this when I'm a small company of 50 people? When does it make sense?
Typically, no. When there's big data, you're usually a bigger company. So because we go to market with HP, Dell, Teradata Informatica, their customer base tends to be the Global 2000, Fortune 500 organizations. So organizations that have stringent regulations, they got to keep that data, and it's growing, and they need a better, more efficient, cost-effective way.
So if I'm a hedge fund of 20 people, then I might be
Probably
using
not.
you guys.
You could use SQL Server maybe.
Okay.
Or you can keep it in Oracle. If it's not painful and expensive, keep it in your traditional database.
Got it.
But you got to keep the data. So we're all about addressing the economics of keeping that data.
And anything about compliance that I should ask you about, like?
Well, the cool thing about Rainstor is, and it's a real differentiator, your traditional database isn't very good at, say, auto-purging based on a business rule that says, I must delete that data 7 years in a day because the SEC or SOX regulations say so. We will auto-purge it. You can set that up once you install and you deploy. So you can say, I want these records deleted on this day.
So I've got compliance to compliance.
Exactly. Compliance,
built-in
compliance.
Yeah. I'm very impressed. Yeah. Great. Deirdre, thank you so much for your time.
All right. Thank you.